Minnesota. I'm Rahana Power.
I'm Alan Tracy.
Today we are going to be talking about films about race, films made by people of color, and films that really depict America's deeply ingrained systemic racism. So we live in Minnesota here, hence the name of the podcast, which is where the horrific murder of George Floyd took place just a few weeks ago. And our cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul, have, really started a movement and triggered something that seems really, really important here in America, right here. And Alan, I know that you recently went into Minneapolis and saw, you went down to where the memorials and everything are happening. Can you talk about, your reaction to this occurring, and then even just what you recently saw, like what you've experienced so far?
Yeah. As I kind of gathered my thoughts about the murder of George Floyd, I guess in a way I'm not surprised at all at the reaction, given our current state of the pandemic. There's a high unemployment rate in our nation, even in the state. On top of which, most people probably, with all those things being in place, most people have their phones, and that might be the only source of entertainment or connection is through social media, since we were all basically, since we last recorded, it was just off of the stay-at-home order, which was about 2 months, I'd say, almost exactly 2 months, which is a long time. And I think that just created the perfect storm for this situation. And the result was 3 days of buildings burning and protests going on for weeks and weeks now, which is interesting because, unlike, I guess, the old days of television was the only media source before computers, my childhood was definitely of growing up with TV, not computers as a little kid. So, but now it's in front of you all the time, and there are more ways to get information quicker and directly, it seems. I think there were, just some of my observations, I think there were many factions in the city that week or weekend following his murder. And rightfully so, because people were obviously going to protest what had happened. And obviously what has been going on with police brutality and just like we're about to get into with some of these films, the systemic racism that many people just may not be aware of or don't think about because they're not black, perhaps. I think it's a tough time to be either governor or mayor of our state, or mayor of these cities, the Twin Cities, and now any city, really, because it's moved on beyond just Minnesota. It's now every city, major city in the U.S. So, but I think this is the right time to make a stand, not when things go back to quote unquote go back to normal,
right?
Because normal didn't get the movement anywhere. And that I'm talking about Black Lives Matter. So, because I remember Philando Castile here, and just the impact that had on everyone here. So, and then of course, with George Floyd here, he's saying "I can't breathe." It's just like Eric Garner all over again. And what was that? 6 years ago?
Yeah.
over Eric Garner, I think. But it's just, yeah, it's, and I think the pandemic is making it worse. It does give me alarm because I don't want people in the movement to get, permanently sick or die from, protesting. But at the same time, I understand that this is something people are willing to die for, and that should say something. Just because, I don't know, things do seem pretty bleak as it is. But there's hope in the movement. There's, to quote, our motto of the Golden State Warriors, there's strength in numbers. So
absolutely. And it seems that even though this has been happening forever, like whether you even just look at all of the killings of black men that are presented on the media that you've seen over the last, say, 20 years, or if you actually listen to people of color and realize that this is an issue that happens every single day across America and has been happening, and it's never ended. Like, there hasn't been some big pause. It didn't just start. It's not like just a sudden issue.
Right.
Like the fact that there's momentum happening now with the Black Lives Matter movement, and there are people, privileged people, white people, who have not spoken out or have not, even if they supported the movement or, believed, like understood this happens. Yep, we get it. But a lot of those people just kind of sat there, didn't know what to do. I am admittedly one of those people. Like, I support it. I agree, but it's like, I'm white. I don't know what to do. And a lot of those people are finally also standing with people of color saying, I'm here with you. I am an ally. And finally acknowledging the white privilege that exists, understanding that, okay, this hasn't affected me, but that has nothing to do with whether this is real or not, because it's obviously real and it's a problem, and it affects someone. Like, it affects anyone. And that's an issue.
Right.
And standing with them. And I think that there's finally momentum to where things are starting to change. It's obviously baby steps. There's obviously a long way to go, but I'm hoping that the momentum keeps going, keeps growing, and real, much, much needed change continues to happen.
Yeah. And I think it's institutionally happening more so too, which is good. Although I won't get into the political aspect because that's not my job. I don't want to be a political analyst.
Yeah.
But things like Will Smith saying, this isn't new. It's just being filmed, basically. So then you have Netflix making a statement saying to be silent is to be complicit.
Yep.
Black Lives Matter. We have a platform, and we have a duty to our black members, employees, creators, and talent to speak up. That's powerful, even though it's like just a statement. It's words, but it matters that they put that out. Had they not put that out, it and it talks about that silence that's complicit that they're talking about.
Exactly.
So, yeah. And the thing that makes this so tough is just the shades of Eric Garner. It's just like, how many times is this going to happen?
Yeah.
And especially on film, like how many times do we have to see this story, So.
And it really points out, like you just mentioned, like how this has happened so many times on film, on top of the hundreds of thousands of times it's happened not on film. I mean, it's to the point where if it can happen on film and be blatant and obvious, and you can have everyone who watches it agree that that's what it is, and it can still make no difference. Like,
Right.
people can still just do whatever they like. That really shows that it's the excuses that have been laid out for every other situation where this has happened, which weren't good excuses. They weren't legitimate, but they were used and accepted by police unions and whatever. Like, it's obvious at this point that that's not real. Like, that's all for show, and they're just gonna, like, if somebody wants to kill somebody, they're just gonna kill somebody and they can get away with it. And that's, I think a big part of what triggered everything to go the way that it did this particular time.
And it didn't start with George, because we know about Ahmaud Arbery.
Yep.
We know about Breonna Taylor.
Yep.
You know, it's all these stories adding up.
Yeah.
And even during a pandemic,
Yeah.
it's like, that's not going to stop them. It's like,
Right.
there's no humanity in some of these people. It's
Yeah.
just, or at least no mercy.
Mm-hmm.
So, speaking of mercy, our first film is Just Mercy. That was one of the films that we'll be touching on today.
Mm-hmm. And this is a recent one too. This just came out last year, or like the very end of the year, I believe. Maybe even the beginning of this year. So it's brand new, and I believe it is on. Is it on Amazon? Can you remind me?
It's everywhere right
is
now.
It? Okay.
Yeah,
it's free.
wide release to VOD.
Yeah, it's free. Like, even if you go on Amazon, you normally have to pay for like a brand new movie.
I
you
know.
don't have to.
That was awesome. I was like, oh, it's just a free rental.
Yeah,
okay.
It's phenomenal. Everyone should absolutely watch it. Everyone should be required to watch it. It made me cry multiple times. Deeply cried, like loud cry. It's incredibly moving. It's infuriating, and emotional and painful to watch, but in the end gives you hope. We should start at the beginning and then go to the end.
Yeah.
But
and it's got a star-studded cast, led by Michael B. Jordan, Jamie Foxx,
yep.
Brie Larson, O'Shea Jackson Jr.
Yes, who's phenomenal. Yeah, the cast was incredible. I thought that they did an amazing job.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah, I think it's based on a true story. So, in the 80s, I believe it was. I think
1989. Yep.
Yeah, but
That's where it starts.
Walter McMillan is accused of murdering a white woman. And I think that was earlier in the timeline. So.
Yeah, it kind of flashes back to that moment where they stop him. I think it was like 1986, when he actually like is stopped and convicted or something like that, or maybe that's when she was murdered. I can't recall exactly, but yeah, he's arrested for the murder of this white woman in like some shop or something, a dry cleaning store or something like that. Even though he was not ever there, he was with like 100 other people, like his family. He was with them the entire like morning to night, the day that it happened, like all of these things.
And then the collusion within the police department, basically, that set him up for being tried as a murderer, and not this other guy who clearly did it. So where the evidence goes.
Yeah, and the fact that in the film, or what I don't know the differences between the film and what really happened, since in most film there is some difference.
Right.
But it portrays it as so the police department sends him to death row a year before he's even convicted of doing this. So, which is not legal. But they send him there right away anyway, and also send this other man there as they're trying to convince him to lie and say that he saw Walter McMillan at this place and clearly did it. So the fact that they just structured all of this for over a year to simply say he did it when they know that he didn't do it, like that in itself is infuriating. And I mean, this is 30 years ago. This isn't like 100 years ago. This isn't 200 years ago. This is 30 years ago. Like, this happened after we were born.
Right. Yeah, the whole story reminds me of another film called The Hurricane with Denzel Washington. Mm-hmm. And he was sentenced to life in prison. And I believe he was a boxer. But this was like a huge throwback. But a kid read his book, and then eventually they basically liked the story. Spoiler alert. Mm-hmm. Actually get him off of, like, the charges dropped because new evidence showed that, he was not guilty. Mm-hmm. So,
is that based on a true story as well?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, and like you just mentioned, so in there's new evidence that pops up, and in Just Mercy, you learn that there's actually no evidence. There's like just mounds of evidence that he had nothing to do with this whatsoever and couldn't possibly have. There's no evidence stating that he could have possibly done it. And when they bring it, they like get an appeal, they bring it back to court, and they prove that like 100%, and it still gets denied. Like, what is wrong with humanity?
Right.
I don't even know how to say it.
Yeah. Well, the lawyer, I mean, the nice thing about this film is there are ways to contribute and continue giving action to pursue justice was through this lawyer, Brian Stevenson, who was part of the Equal Justice Initiative.
Yes.
Which you can donate to, which you can, give to, because they are basically, in the film at least, the way they portrayed it was he was doing this pro bono, or at least that's how it appeared in the film.
Yep. And
basically their job is to, try to free wrongly convicted, people. So.
Yes. And yeah, like you just mentioned, if you actually go to support.eji.org, you can donate to them right now. Right. Which is phenomenal.
And their main cause is to get people either off of death row or life in prison, which, the highest level of sentencing. Because for one, they shouldn't be there if they're wrongly accused.
Exactly.
So. And especially without evidence, because most of the time it's all about evidence. That's what they always say in law. So, so yeah.
So yeah, this film is phenomenal. Everyone should watch it. It's very emotional. Have Kleenex with you. But especially, I feel like if you are white, you should especially watch this. You should watch all of these that we're going to talk about today and more. There's a list. But especially, I feel like there are a lot of people that I have seen over the last 3 weeks that I did not realize don't acknowledge the fact that white privilege exists and the fact that that this exists at all. Like, to them, this would just be a movie. Like, this isn't real. There's no way that this could possibly happen. And it does. And so I think that it's very important for those people to watch this and to acknowledge the fact that this is a true story. And this isn't just like, oh, well, this one person out of 7.7 billion people in the world. Like, no, this happens all the time here. Like, this is a thing. That's why the initiative exists, because this happens frequently. So 100%, everyone listening should, at the end of this podcast, go watch that movie for free.
Right.
And then buy it because it's amazing. But this one also has a tie to another film, thanks to O'Shea Jackson Jr.
Mm-hmm.
He was also, he actually played his dad, which is awesome. I think it's so cool because he looks exactly like him.
I know, right.
In Straight Outta Compton, which was a phenomenal film.
Yeah, O'Shea Jackson Jr. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does look like his dad so much.
So much. Like, when we first saw it, I didn't realize that was his son. And we get out of the movie and I was like, oh my God, he looks exactly like Ice Cube. That's so crazy. How did they make that happen? Like, how did they find a guy that looks just like him? And Jared's just like, you know that's his kid, right? Like, well, I do now.
Yeah.
But yeah, just incredible film.
Yeah, I forget where it was, because I remember at some point I found out Ice Cube's real name was O'Shea Jackson. Yeah. And because I listened to his music, of course, and NWA back in high school.
Yeah.
I think I started with like Jay-Z Volume 2, and then
yeah,
Avenger. Maybe it was Volume 3. Yeah, it was Big Pimpin'. I think that was the one. It started with that, and then I learned more going back, and then Ice Cube and Dr. Dre and on and on.
Yes.
So, yeah, O'Shea Jackson Jr. plays Ice Cube in Straight Outta Compton, which came out about 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And also takes place in the latter half of the 1980s. So again, like, we're born, like, everything that they're talking about in their music, everything that they, show in the film and all of that, like, that's happening less than 30 years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you get enough films lined up, you can see the timeline of when events, ones that are based on true stories like these two are, and just how they all connect.
Yeah.
And just the whole story, a context, if you will. I think Straight Outta Compton was just a great film.
It was. I knew I had listened to Dr. Dre and I'd listened to Ice Cube, like, growing up. Although I wasn't supposed to, but I did.
Yeah, right.
Because
parental advisory sticker.
Right, yeah, like, I'm going to listen to what I want to listen to. But I had actually never listened to NWA before. I didn't know what NWA was. So this, again, was educational for me. I had no idea. Yeah. And it was fascinating learning about these two, like, how they got into it, everything that they were experiencing just as people in Compton. Like, I grew up in the Bay Area. So, I mean, like 6 hours north of there? Something like that. And just seeing, like...
basically LA.
Yeah, like, seeing the incredible difference in, again, my experience as, a white kid in the Bay Area, and then their experience at the same time in Compton, just a little south. Like, it was very very educational, and also it was just phenomenal. Like, it was done so well.
Yeah.
And now I love NWA.
Yeah, Gary Gray was the director. He's done things like The Italian Job, the remake, and The Negotiator. Yeah. I think, that was really nice to see just kind of I knew kind of I had watched some of the documentaries previously about like Death Row and Suge Knight. Everyone knows him, so
Yeah.
it's and I knew Eazy-E had passed away because of AIDS. So. But yeah, it was very interesting seeing the relationship between like Eazy-E and Ice Cube and Dr. Dre and just what happened, and how the music business can also take its toll, as well as perhaps Hollywood. So,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah. And then next we have a film called Queen and Slim.
Okay, I just watched this. It was excellent. First off, I have a love for Daniel Kaluuya. I love him. I think he's a phenomenal actor. And so that was like one giant thing that really like sucked me into this right away. I don't know, there's something about his style of acting that is just so mesmerizing. Like, you just want to see every single thing he's about to do next. He's very engaging. He was so excellent in this film. And it was a truly heartbreaking movie that really shows, like, these are just two young people out on a date. That's it. Like, they're just on a date. And the moment that they get pulled over, you can feel the tension, and you can see what they're going through, and it's heartbreaking. And every decision that they make and they have to make, and they're trying to figure out, what could we possibly do next? In this impossible situation. And I can't even imagine.
Right. No, I'm with you. I love this film from the get-go. Even from the trailer. They sold me at the trailer right away because it was they fit in that line, what was it, the Black Bonnie and Clyde?
Yeah.
That was good. I think man, and this is a film written and directed by women of color. And I think this was just a beautiful film. It was kind of a mix of like a road movie slash obviously dealing with systemic racism, police brutality. It's so many things. It shows the humanity of, why are they running?
Yeah.
Even though it's a fictional tale, it's grounded in reality. And again, we're going to spoil all the way through this podcast, so
yeah, sorry everyone.
You really should, first off.
Yes.
And then maybe come back and listen to this.
Right. I know. I had so much hope at the end of this movie. Yeah. So much hope. I was like, oh my God, they're going to make it. Like, this is going to be fantastic. Like, they did it. They got out. They're okay.
Right.
They can just live their lives finally. And fuck, I cried so hard. Because that's all it is. They just want to live their lives.
Yeah.
That's all that it is. And like from the start, they're put in this horrible situation where that's just not an option.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrific.
Yeah. And I love the journey is also in discovering who they are, because it's the first date they're on.
Yeah.
Just like us, the audience, we're just being introduced to these people, and we don't know anything about them until they start talking to one another and interacting more. And
they just hate each other so much at first.
I know.
It's adorable, honestly. Because they have like nothing in common. They don't like each other. They don't like have anything to actually talk about. Anytime he tries to bring something up, she's like, nope, we're good. Like, that's no thanks. They clash so hard, even within the first like few days of being on the run. Like they just can't communicate effectively. To like, they don't like each other. And then all of a sudden you just see something, like you see it flip, and they like really open up and they start to just be themselves and realize how much they actually do, like how appreciative they are that they have each other. Right. And how important that is to them.
And they're in this together whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
And that's kind of they're all they have right now.
Yeah.
So.
And they each have like such strengths that even though parts of their personality clash, like those strengths complement each other so much that they really need each other in that entire scenario. Like it's a beautiful, again, heartbreaking, but beautiful film.
And they never refer to each other as their names either.
Yeah, not until the very end. Somebody, like, I think it's after everything happens at the, like, strip or whatever. It might be, like, one of the like, newscasts after all of that happens where they say their names, and that's it. Which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very moving film. From start to finish. And Daniel Kaluuya and Jodie Turner-Smith are phenomenal.
Yep.
And I thought that, is it Bokeem Woodbine, who plays her uncle? He did an excellent job as well. I really like his acting.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had a fantastic cast.
Yeah. And just a great job cinematography-wise. That also drew me in from a film standpoint. It's just the image just looked great. So, plus the story, of course, and tying in protests and continued police brutality, and even while they're on the run. So it's but also it puts you in their shoes. It really does put you in the place that, like, I would assume most people would be in, if not even if they're not on the run. Just a constant fear of, I could be shot today because of police. It's just, it really does put that fear in you. But at the same time, it's like, there are moments in the film where they slow down and just want to enjoy life, and they don't want to have to worry about that for just a few seconds, like with the horse and just like hanging out of the car, So.
It was really interesting because in those moments I found that, like, you can see that that's what they're doing. They're trying to slow down and be like, I need this like 30 seconds of life just being normal, like life being okay, and I'm going to live and do this thing that's going to bring me like a moment of happiness. But at the same time, I found myself looking all around the screen, waiting for something to happen.
I know.
I was like, oh my gosh, like, I want you to be okay. Please be okay. Like, oh my God, I had so much anxiety. It was a very interesting dynamic.
that kind of reminds me of our discussion about The Invisible Man, just kind of like things like that are
Yes.
present when you're in these situations. And yeah, I recommend this movie to everyone. So
Absolutely. 100%. And then he's actually also in another film, Daniel is, that was huge.
Oh, before we jump into that one, I just have to make mention real quick. The writer from this film is actually, you can see her in Westworld Season 3.
What?
Yeah, Lena Waithe, I think it is. She's with like Aaron Paul and Beast Mode.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know she was... You said she wrote that?
I didn't either. Yeah, she wrote this, but...
Oh, that's phenomenal. She's awesome. She was also in Master of None.
Oh, was she?
Yeah, she's excellent.
But yeah, it was... just had to make that quick mention.
Absolutely. That's so cool.
But as you were saying...
Oh, yes, so he's...
Daniel Kaluuya.
Yes, he's in another film that was like, I think it was written... So it was written and directed by Jordan Peele. I think it's technically categorized as a horror film.
Yeah.
But it's...
Thriller, yeah.
Yes, it really depicts an interesting look at systemic racism. It's fascinating the way that Jordan Peele did this. But it's Get Out. It's like 3 years old now, something like that.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. Amazing movie. I love Jordan Peele, although I have to admit I didn't see this right away because I can't handle scary movies.
Right, that's right.
But once it came like out on video, I sat down and I watched it on my little TV instead of like, a theater. It was amazing. Daniel Kaluuya does such a fantastic job. It was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And like, until you understand what's happening, like the majority of the movie, you don't fully get what's going on.
Right.
Which I think is really intriguing. Yeah. I don't know. What did you think about that film?
Oh, I definitely loved it. I like all the hidden visual things too, like what's her name? I guess the girlfriend, when she's what was it, like Fruit Loops and milk were separated? It was like this moment where she's like just eating either the Fruit Loops or drinking the milk separately. But it was just kind of like that, like separating color from white.
Yeah.
And it was just, I'm just like, when I read that later, it was just kind of like, it's a small detail in the film, but it's just, I appreciate those little things, that much thought that goes into like, so much about what the movie represents. So, but also it's like at the very beginning of the film, like when he's going through the neighborhood and this white car pulls up beside him, and he's just like, no, not gonna go that way. In the suburbs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this was an excellent introduction as well to audiences when it came to Jordan Peele as more than just, from like Key and Peele and having that like comedy perspective. And I know that he had stated, like I had read some stuff about like how he really came up with this, saying that it's like it was a really personal story for him and something that he really wanted to depict. Although it wasn't necessarily anything like obviously autobiographical, but he wanted to really play off of the fact that it's horror, but satirical at the same point.
Right.
And he nailed it.
Yeah.
Having said that, I still haven't seen his newest movie because, again, I'm too afraid. But that's beside the point.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I saw Us. Mm-hmm.
Does that also, like...
You'll like it because, again, you'll see Elizabeth Moss in there, so...
I love her.
Yeah. And she plays this character that it's just, I can't describe it either. It's just kind of an off character, kind of. It's just like, huh. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay. I'll have to check it out, like in the middle of a day at some point.
Right.
So another film that's, I haven't seen this for about a year and a half or so. It's also about 6 years old. But this one doesn't take place within the last, 20, 30 years, kind of like all of those do. This one takes place in 1965, and it is Selma, which is about Martin Luther King Jr., John Lewis, Hosea Williams, all of them. And they, went to Selma. And they're, marching and protesting and trying to advocate for civil rights. Again, this was in 1965. This was not 100 years ago. This is not 300 years ago. This was, 30, 60 years ago? That's it?
Yeah.
John Lewis is still very much alive.
Yeah.
And kicking ass. This...
And this is an Ava DuVernay film?
Mm-hmm. This is another one that I think a lot of people... I shouldn't even say a lot of people. I think everyone should be required to watch. I don't think that even if you are learning about the actual details of what happened in Selma in school, which I don't believe everyone is, but if you are, I don't think that you're being taught in an effective way to actually fully understand what happened. And maybe this isn't the film that's going to really show that. I don't know. I thought it was effective to me, to really see it from their perspective and see what they had to go through in order to, even host the march, have the march, let alone executing it and then being just beaten and people dying, being murdered and all of these things just to try and get this one, it was very, very powerful. And I think that it's important for people to really see and experience that perspective. 'Cause that's what film is. You're, seeing it through their eyes as they go through this.
Right. And the importance of having equal voting rights, especially in the South.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just that's so important that, I think most people should understand is having the right to vote is a huge deal. And it's what politicians fear the most is just your vote, basically.
As we can see right now in Georgia.
Right.
Yeah. So again, this is still very relevant. Very relevant.
And if you can vote, you should, because people obviously died for this. So it's important that anyone who has the right to vote does vote. So that's why I think it's so important too, and just having that civil right. So, and that's obviously what the movement was all about.
Yeah.
So,
Sam, I know that there's God, there's so many other films. We actually have a list right now. Immediately after the murder of George Floyd, we sat down and talked about like all of the films and like documentaries that we want to watch, to really learn more and understand more, trying to educate ourselves. And on top of that, I have a list of books that I want to read, because I think that's sort of our place right now, is to listen and to learn and be educated, and then just support the movement, in any way that we can, like be that kind of ally. So, and these movies are a really good start, I think. Although there are many, many more, but
right. Yeah, and that's important, and just knowing that in film it is our duty as well. Just like the Netflix statement says, it doesn't stop with just bigger industries. It starts with all of us, each one of us.
Yep.
So it is our duty to watch out for each other and stand up for each other. So, and I'm glad that I guess we're not the center of it per se, but at least it's being raised up. So,
right.
If that makes sense. Well, yeah.
Yeah, and it's important to note that it has to keep going. Like, again, like the momentum can't be lost, because I feel like and maybe it's because of the media, maybe it's because there's just so much happening in the world and people who aren't affected are easily distracted. But it's so important to know that in order for the change that needs to happen to actually occur, the protesting has to continue, and the movement has to continue and has to keep growing, and people have to continue to support it and continue to talk about it and be vocal and
not confuse like protesting with looting or rioting, and knowing the difference.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Because like I mentioned, there, like that week of his murder, there were various factions that came into town that week. So,
yeah.
And that's unfortunate that people want to take advantage of a situation per se. Not everyone, but it's just certain parties.
Yeah.
So.
And the amount of, oh man, you guys have lost so many friends in the last 3 weeks, and I don't even care. The amount of people that I've seen take the stance of, yeah, that happened, but these buildings are on fire, and like, this is horrible. I'm like, right. It is. It's terrible. But you know what's worse? Murder.
Right.
Like the systemic racism.
No one died during even the rioting. It's just like you care more about a building than you do life. It's just
exactly.
Check your priorities.
Yes.
But like you said, it's we're continuing the movement. It doesn't stop with when the fire stops.
Yeah.
From a burning building, it's just the beginning. You gotta keep supporting your friends and
exactly
in the community.
Yeah. And keep having conversations, keep learning, keep listening. Be uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable. That's good. We should be. We need to be. We have to do everything that we can to help.
Yeah. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's our show for today. Yeah. Thank you guys for joining us with this pretty heavy subject matter, but we thought it was important to at least say something. So, and definitely share about the films that we think are important too. So,
Absolutely. Thanks so much for hopping on and listening, everyone. We will see you again soon.
See ya.